California just lost 139,000 barrels of gasoline a day, overnight, a century old. Refinery vanished, wiping out 8% of the state's fuel supply and sending hundreds of workers home for good. With no pipelines connecting to the rest of America and only 55 eligible tankers in the entire country, this shutdown is more than a local loss. It is the trigger that could force 40 million people to gamble on faraway tankers and foreign refineries for every drop they burn. How did the world's fifth largest economy become a fuel island, trapped and exposed? The answer starts right now. At the edge of Wilmington, the gates of a refinery that once fueled Los Angeles for generations are locked for good. The Phillips 66 plant has been a fixture since the early 1920s. It powered city buses and family road trips. Now, its 405 acres sit silent, towers and tanks casting long shadows over neighborhoods that grew up around them. For over a century, this complex pushed out 1.3 billion gallons of gasoline each year, enough to keep millions of cars moving across California's highways. But that steady flow is finished. The shutdown means 139,000 barrels of gasoline per day are gone from the state's supply. This is not just a number. It is a lifeline for commuters, truckers, and small businesses. For the people who worked here, the loss is immediate. 600 employees and 300 contractors face their last week on the job, many after decades of service. A handful have been offered transfers to marine terminal roles, but most are left with uncertainty, severance packets, and the daunting prospect of starting over. Phillips 66's public statement promises support, but the reality on the ground is stark. Local union halls are crowded with workers sorting through paperwork and trying to piece together next steps. In break rooms, stories echo of fathers and daughters who spent their entire careers inside these gates. The refinery's closure is more than a business decision. It is a turning point for families and for a community that built its identity around the hum of 24-hour production. The fuel that once flowed out of Wilmington now leaves a void, both economic and personal, that cannot be filled overnight. California's gasoline supply chain is hemmed in by technical and legal barriers that few other regions face. The state's strict air quality rules require a unique gasoline blend known as CARBOB, short for California Reformulated Gasoline Blend Stock, for oxygenate blending. This is not just a cleaner version of regular gas. CARBOB's formula is so specialized that only a handful of refineries worldwide can produce it consistently, and most are already running at full tilt to meet their own markets. Adding to the challenge, California has no pipelines connecting it to the rest of the nation's refining hubs. Unlike the Midwest or Gulf Coast, where gasoline can move freely through thousands of miles of pipe, every drop that enters California from outside must arrive by ship. That means when in-state production drops, the state can't simply tap into a continental reserve. It has to wait for tankers to sail in from across the Pacific or up from Canada, often on voyages that stretch for weeks. Even the shipping options are limited. The Jones Act, a federal law dating back to 1920, requires that any fuel moved between U.S. ports must travel on American-built, American-crewed, and U.S.-flagged ships. There are only about 55 such petroleum tankers in the entire country, and only a portion are configured for clean gasoline. Most are already committed to other routes. This leaves California overwhelmingly dependent on foreign-flagged tankers for its gasoline imports, especially when it comes to the CARBOB blend. Phillips 66 has announced plans to produce some California-grade gasoline at its Washington State refinery, but the technical hurdles are steep and volumes will be limited. For now, the state's fuel system is defined by isolation, a boutique product, a tiny eligible tanker fleet, and a total lack of pipeline lifelines. The result is a supply chain with almost no room for error. A single tanker carrying California-grade gasoline leaves Ulsan, South Korea, bound for Los Angeles. The journey stretches across nearly 6,000 miles of open ocean, threading through the Strait of Malacca, a narrow, congested waterway where piracy and geopolitical tensions are never far from the headlines. From there, the ship faces the vast Pacific, where typhoons can reroute or stall vessels for days. What looks like a straight line on a map is in reality a 30 to 40-day gauntlet, where every delay ripples back through the supply chain. Gasoline loaded in December may not reach California pumps until February. Any disruption, a storm off the Philippines, congestion at the Panama Canal, or a labor slowdown at the Port of Los Angeles can add weeks to the timeline. Unlike pipelines that deliver fuel continuously, tankers arrive in discrete, unpredictable waves. When a refinery fire hit Martinez in February, the scramble for emergency imports sent traders scouring the globe, paying premiums just to keep stations supplied. The state's gasoline flows depend on a fleet that is almost entirely foreign flagged. There are only about 55 American-flagged petroleum tankers in the entire country, and most are already spoken for on other routes. The vast majority of California's fuel now rides on ships registered in Greece, Singapore, Russia, or China. Some vessels are owned by state-linked giants, for example SCF Group from Russia, or China, COSCO Shipping, adding a layer of geopolitical risk to every voyage. Maritime law experts warn that California's dependence on this patchwork of foreign vessels leaves it exposed. A single missed delivery can trigger shortages, sending prices soaring overnight. The state's isolation, once an afterthought, now means every mile of open water is a potential choke point for the fuel that keeps millions of cars on the road. May 2025 brought a surge of tankers into California's ports, 279,000 barrels of gasoline arriving each day, the highest import level in 4 years. 70% of that fuel came from South Korea and other Asian refiners, with India sending 39,000 barrels per day, its largest contribution in over a year. This sudden flood of foreign gasoline was not a sign of abundance, but a scramble to fill the vacuum left by shrinking in-state production. As imports rose, so did the price at the pump. California drivers paid an average of $4.68 per gallon in May 2025, while the rest of the country filled up for just $3.12 per gallon. That $1.56 gap, multiplied across millions of vehicles, added up to hundreds of dollars extra per household each year. Wholesale margins soared to 90 cents a gallon, double the typical level, while San Francisco spot prices climbed $40 per barrel above the Gulf Coast benchmark. For families, the math is inescapable. Michael Misch, an energy economist at USC, estimates that the shift to imports is costing Californians an extra $600 to $1,000 annually. The price swings are not just a matter of cents. They reflect a system stretched to its limit, where every delayed tanker or refinery hiccup ripples straight to the consumer, with the California Energy Commission projecting that 30% of the state's gasoline will need to come from imports by 2026. The cost of this new dependency is landing squarely in drivers' wallets. Valero's Benicia Refinery, a giant that processed 145,000 barrels per day in the San Francisco Bay Area,